Whether you're running a solo game and you're looking to get some henchmen or some hirelings to help you beef up your character and ability to survive, or you plan to run some mass combat and you're planning to have a lot of different soldiers involved in a battle, today I'm going to show you my advanced Counter-Strike rules, which will essentially improve and speed up that gameplay and help you run a more dynamic combat. So without further ado, I'm going to show you the 3 different types of henchmen and hirelings that I use. The 3 main types are Footman, Archer, and Captain. All 3 of these henchmen do flat attack rolls, so you don't have to worry about any types of bonuses. When we're looking at the Footman here, on a success of an attack against the enemy's armor class, it does 3 points of damage. Now on a 7 or less, the Footman dies. In addition, whenever you take a hit, you can sacrifice any of your Footmen or any of these henchmen for you to not take the damage. Now if we look over at the Archer here, it's very similar. They also do 3 points of damage. On a 9 or less, they die, but only if the enemy has a ranged attack. So these rangers will essentially stay right outside of the melee range and will fire off, rounds of arrows towards your enemies. And the final henchman is the Captain. The Captain does 4 points of damage. On a 4 or less, the Captain dies. Now this 7 or less, 9 or less, or 4 or less correlate with an armor class essentially for most games, where the Footman is essentially wearing a ringmail, the Archer is going to be wearing some leather, and your Captain is going to be wearing some chainmail. So depending on the system that you're looking at, those armor class numbers are typically around that range. So if you really want to, you can adjust that, or essentially just leave as is, because there's really only a plus 1 or 2 difference. So during combat, these Footmen, these Archers, these Captain, these guys are all around you. They're all walking with you. And when an encounter occurs, you determine the distance, and then you can use your Footman and Archer at any time, as well as the Captain. Now the assumption here is you're playing a melee attacking character. However, if you're a magic user or some type of wizard, you would essentially set your Footmen forward to protect you, and they would do the initial battling in the melee range. So they would start charging the enemy. Meanwhile, the Archer would stay back behind you. So once it's your turn, you take your attack roll, whatever that attack roll is, and depending on how many Footmen you have, Archers, Captains, you essentially roll all those dice at the same time and keep track of which ones roll the number or less. Now, a very good way to keep these different types of henchmen separated is using different decolored D20s. I actually happen to have a lot of different types of colors of D20s, or actually when I go to these fantasy game shops, I tend to buy clusters of D20s that are all different colors. And so here's the basic rules. After you attack, they attack on your turn. Enemies only attack you. So that's right, there's only 1 attack towards you, or if the monster has multiple attacks, it takes those multiple attacks against you. But remember, anytime you take a hit, you can sacrifice a henchman instead of you taking the damage. And on your turn, you essentially grab as many dice, and if you have the color coordinated dice, you can use number of henchman dice, Archer dice, and Captain dice. If you happen to have a mass battle, sometimes usually only have a Footman, or a few Footmen, an Archer, and 1 Captain. And then you essentially just take those dice, roll them, see which ones hit, apply the damage, and whoever rolled below that number to see if they survive the encounter. And then right after that, you go ahead and take the monster that then do their attacks. And again, every time on your turn, just go through the process again. Each of these henchmen will have about a 30-foot move rate. They don't do special moves such as dash or move. They really can only move 30 feet at a time. However, if you really want, you can add the move into this. Remember that the Archer is always going to be 30 feet away from the melee, whatever's happening. And if you happen to be a fighter inside that melee, it's standing back. If you're a magic user or someone who uses ranged attacks, it will be back there with you, somewhere within the melee range of you. That Archer does not get hit if the monster is at a distance. However, if that monster is at a distance and you roll under that and the ranger is the last one standing, that monster will charge at the ranger and essentially kill them. Now, I use a lot of these henchmen during my solo play-along series on RPG Boon, so you can look at that and see how I used them before in the past. This is a little bit more cleaned up than those, but essentially anytime there's going to be an encounter and you need more men to help you out with a certain scenario, I make a DC 10 charisma check or some type of persuasion check. You gave some type of rousing speech, and if you succeed, you get a 1d4 henchman plus your charisma modifier. In the solo gameplay, I use a little bit different because I'm taught people to make characters between levels 3 and 7, and depending on the level that you chose, you're going to have so many number of henchmen that go with you, and I distribute your henchmen to you through a ratio or through randomly rolling a 2d6. So using the Footman, the Archer, and the Captain is the simplest way for you to run these types of solo play-alongs, or having a bunch of henchmen with you, or if you're trying to run some type of mass combat. However, there is a even more advanced version of Counter-Strike rules, or at least the henchmen. So there's an advanced version, and these are the extra henchmen that you could use. So you can see here in this scenario, I added a militia, which essentially is a much weaker version of the Footmen, so you can have a much more diverse group of soldiers if you're doing some type of mass combat. And the militia act just like the Footmen, except they die a lot easier. Now, I have also a more specialized group of henchmen and hirelings. Includes the priest, the dungeoneer, the point man, and the bodyguard. Now, you can see I limit the ability of the priest to heal, so it can only do it 3 times per hour. It does not attack, and again, you can sacrifice that priest if you take a hit. In addition, I give the option for you to pay them or have to convince them to come along with your party. So there is a DC charisma check that I've listed here. Now, your dungeoneers, you're expert in crawling dungeons or crawling caves, and they do not attack, but they do a lot of detecting and disarming of traps. They have either advantage if your system allows that, that's the 2d20 and take the highest, or if there's no advantage in your system, you can give them a +5. I know it seems like a really high, but this is their specialty and they do it really well. Now, the thing about these dungeoneers, that if they fail their detect or disarm trap, they essentially die from the trap. So you sacrifice them in that way. And in addition, if you happen to be in combat, you can sacrifice them if you take a hit. Now, the other henchman is a point man. He's really just a meat sack, somebody that will die. He stays out in the front of the group, really holding a torch, looking around, or they have a +5 or have an advantage against being surprised. If they fail that roll, they essentially die. Now, this is kind of a throwaway because they die, but your team is no longer surprised because they're the point man. They're at least, 10 to 15 feet ahead of you and they die, so you don't have to be surprised by any incoming monsters. Final henchman I included here is the bodyguard, who does really nothing but try to protect you. And so anytime you take a hit, they try to reduce the damage by 1d12. And if they fail reducing that damage to 0, the bodyguard dies. Now, the other cool thing about the bodyguard is they are immune to flame. In addition, if you look at all the different hirelings that I put on there, I also put a optional rule for morale or fleeing, and you basically do a DC 10 check, use your charisma, you try to persuade them to try to stay with you in battle, not run away. And that's it, everybody. I wanted to show you my Counter-Strike rules for henchmen and hirelings. I have some pay rates at the bottom that you can use, essentially. And these guys are there to help you run a solo game as well as running mass combat. And it shows you a way to run combat where you're not constantly keeping track of all the hit points, all the armor classes and stuff like that, all these bonuses. You essentially designate D20s for the specific henchmen that you're using. You roll them and they either hit and cause damage, or they fail badly and die, or they, have some type of ability that helps protect you, the player character. I'm going to create a PDF copy, put it on RPG Boons and the DonFranco3games.com, so you can go there, look up this PDF, download it, or if you can screenshot this and go back, rewind it, and just take some screenshots and have it for yourself that way. I'm Don Franco 3. This is RPG Boons, where we talk about everything RPG and how everything is RP. If you like to cut in my gibberish, you know what to do. Leave a comment. I'll get back to you. Until next time.